Welcome back to Cooking with a Veteran. As I was telling you before, Easter Sunday is coming up, and so I wanted to pick a few of my favorite dishes from my grandmother. She used to cook a big feast for the whole family. I mean, chicken, roast, lamb, beef, mashed potatoes, rice, like four different types of vegetables, a casserole. I mean, she would start like early in the morning cooking. Um, and I wanted to show you some of the dishes that she would cook that are mostly prepped in the oven. And I'm going to do a few things a little bit different than she used to do. But we're getting started here. So I have my enamel cast iron going on over here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to sear the meat before I put it in the oven. And what's great about this is I'm going to do this right here in one pot. Okay, normally, if you were doing something like this, if you didn't have one of these types of pans or a beautiful, cast iron, you would have to sear it in one pan and then place it into your baking pan to put in the oven. But I'm not going to have to do that because I have this great large enamel cast iron pot that I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let these vegetables sear up. Okay, you can already hear them starting to go. I preheated my pot on a medium. All right, I don't want to burn this. I just want to get this meat going in here. Okay. So let's talk about what else we got going on with that. For my vegetables, I'm going to use some asparagus. I got some beautiful, nice organic asparagus from the local market. I got some nice mixed rainbow baby carrots that I'm going to put in there. You don't have to. You could use just whole carrots if you want to. I have some thyme. I have some rosemary. I have some, they didn't have the Kerrygold, but I got some of this. I'm going to try out this garlic and herb, Parmesan basil infused butter here that I like to put on. And of course I have 3 pounds of my pork tenderloin. And, traditionally, being in a Roman Catholic family, we would go ahead and we would probably have some lamb. But lamb is really expensive. And I know not everybody eats lamb. So I wanted to put something together that people would really like. Alright, so I got the onions and I got the garlic going. This is just for an under flavor in here. Okay. I'm going to take my lamb at this time. And I'm going to sear the lamb. Hold on, I got to grab some. I forgot to get my tongs. Alright. And so now I'm going to sear the lamb right in the pot. And this came cut in half. I usually like a whole one. I didn't realize it was cut in half. But that works out just fine too. Okay? And I'm not going to cook this through. I'm going to sear this about 2 minutes on each side. So that this way it gets started cooking. And then the oven will do the rest. And that's the great thing about a meal like this. If you, except for the searing here, if you do all of this, this whole meal is basically done in the oven. You put it all together, you stick it in the oven, you set your timer, and you can go off and do other things. Okay? And that's why I love these kind of meals. We always talk about, those one-pot dishes. And this is a great one-pot dish. Now, of course, you could do this in a slow cooker. Okay, that's totally up to you. I'm not the biggest fan of a slow cooker. I do have one. But, with a meal like this, I really like to go ahead and just do it right on in my pots. Okay, I spent a lot of money on getting some nice, beautiful cast iron pots. But the great thing about cast iron is that it'll last you. If you take good care of it, It'll last you forever. I mean, I have one of my pots. I've had it for like, you know, I think 20 years. Okay, it's just a great pot. All right, I just want to make sure that I'm getting some nice browning on the outside. And you know, the truth is, even if I was doing this in an Instapot, if I could, I would sear it a little bit. You want that little bit of sear on the outside. All right, that's coming along beautifully there. One of the hard parts about having a glass stove top is sometimes when you move things in your pot, it moves along the countertop, I mean along the top there. Okay, so yeah, I try to be careful for that. And look at that, see? There's no burning. I'm keeping this at a medium. All right, I'm just searing the nice edges. And you want that flavor. Now, this is 3 pounds of pork tenderloin, so I'm going to put this in the oven. When I put it in the oven at 375 degrees, I'm going to cook it about an hour. But that's going to vary depending on the inside temperature. So if you have a thermometer, like I have a thermometer, I'm going to take my thermometer, and you really want the pork on the inside to be between 140 and 170 degrees, depending on, you know, what your liking is, whether you want it medium or medium well. You don't really want it to go above 170 because then it'll just dry out, and the last thing you want is a dry pork, right? All right, so let's see how this is doing over here. Looking beautiful. Now, if I had one big piece here, I would have to remove it to do this next part. But what's great about having 2 pieces is I can just move this piece over. Okay, I'm going to place in some of my asparagus over here on this side. I'm going to move it back over. And the reason I'm putting the asparagus on the bottom is I don't want the meat to get stuck to the bottom of the pot as it's cooking. Okay? I'm going to create a kind of a bed for it with the vegetables. Right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in my baby carrots. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in some of my garlic infused butter. And I want that garlic infused flavor. Okay. And I don't want this to burn, so I'm actually going to turn the top off. I'm going to put in 4 cups. I'm using beef broth. You can use chicken broth. You can use vegetable broth. Okay, I'm going to put in 4 cups of broth. Almost 4 cups of broth. Okay? I'm not going to cover it totally, but I'm going to put in the broth. And then on the top, I'm going to put a special, this is my special mix for roast. It's crushed peppercorn, some crushed sea salt, some crushed dried garlic. All right. I love that crust look on the top of a really nice roast. It really does come out beautifully. I'm going to put a generous portion on here, and then sprinkle a little bit on the inside. Okay. I'm also going to take a little bit of green onion. Okay, so a little bit of green onion. I'm going to stick on some of my rosemary here. Okay, I want that to get into the flavor there. Get some beautiful rosemary going. And I'm going to stick on a little bit of thyme here. Okay. As you can see, this is really easy to prep, really easy to cook. I've got, like I said, my 3 pounds of lamb roast. I got my my baby carrots, my asparagus. I got some broth in there. Again, the broth is up to you. I got some of my garlic butter in there. I went ahead and I seared off the meat. I'm simply going to cover this, and then I'm going to take this and stick this in the oven for about an hour, or until it is between 140. I like it more like 150. And I'm just going to stick this right in the oven. All right, so now we're back. Part 2 of the meal here. My potatoes au gratin. Okay. Now normally you would see them cooked in a pan like this, but you know, I like to try to keep things to a one-pot type of meal. So I'm going to be cooking this in my cast iron pan. Note to self: get another enamel cast iron pan if you're going to make meals like this. But in my regular cast iron pan, it makes up a beautiful meal also. Alright, so I got my potatoes all cut up, and you'll notice, I'll bring you back here for a moment, you'll notice that I cut them all about the same thickness. Remember what I was telling you before is you want to make sure that you're not cutting the potatoes at different sizes, because some potatoes that are bigger will take longer to cook, potatoes that are thinner will take shorter to cook. As you see, I preheated my pan as always. Okay, you always want to preheat the pan before you start putting stuff in. Okay, especially if you're cooking with oil, the last thing you want to do is just have the oil sitting in the pan. You want to preheat it, put in the oil. All right, I'm adding a little bit of garlic and onion to this dish. Okay, I'm going to saute these up. I have these at a medium. Like I said, what's great about the way I'm doing this is because this is my cast iron, I'm going to be able to take this directly from the stove top and put it right into the oven. Okay, I'm not going to have to worry about transferring it to a pan and then put it in the oven. And the other great thing is because I'm going to do this in my cast iron, it doesn't take as long to cook. If I took this and put this into a cold pan, you're looking at about an hour and a half to cook. And I'm going to cut that cooking time down because I'm doing this in my cast iron. It's only going to take about 40 minutes, maybe even less, maybe about 30 minutes. Okay? But you'll know when it's done, when it's nice and golden brown on the top, and it just looks all beautiful. I'm going to put a little bit of my herb butter in there. I love to carry that herb butter flavor through. Okay? This is a nice, creamy, buttery kind of dish. Alright, I'm going to turn that a little bit lower. And at this time, I'm going to take and I'm going to put in just a little bit of flour. I'm going to create a base on the bottom here with some flour. Okay. There we go. And that's going to mix in with that butter, and that's going to create a nice base in there for my au gratin potatoes. I can never say that correctly. Au gratin. Okay. Alright. That's become nice and thick. Now, normally people would just put milk. I am going to put milk. It says about a cup. That's about a cup. I'm just kind of guessing along. And I'm also going to put in some heavy cream. Okay, about a cup of heavy cream. I'm just kind of eyeballing all of this. I'm not really measuring it all up. Okay. Now in a dish like this, I really like a nice pepper flavor for a dish like this. So I'm going to add a good amount of black pepper to this. Okay. Love that flavor. I'm going to add some white pepper. Not too much. Remember, white pepper is really strong. A little bit of salt. Okay. Get that going. Beautiful. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start adding in my potatoes here, and I want to mix them in. Alright, and now that I have all my potatoes in there, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a little bit more of this butter in there. I love a nice buttery flavor to my potatoes. Really, I just like butter on anything. You know, I like to say it's because I'm Irish, but no, it's just because I like butter and everything. Okay. Alright, so I got that in there. I'm going to top this off with some Gruyere cheese. Okay, I'm going to shred down some nice, beautiful cheese right on top of this. Alright, so I got a good amount of my Gruyere cheese on top. And I'm going to add a little bit, I had some slices left over of a little bit of horseradish cheese. I love the flavor of horseradish cheese. It's not for everybody, you don't have to. But I'm just going to add a little bit on top. Add some nice slices. These make a great grilled cheese, bacon, and tomato sandwich. A little bit of horseradish cheese. Okay, I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of green onion on the top there. And then again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to stick this in my oven for about 30-40 minutes, or until the top is golden brown. Alright, time for a little coffee break. Now let's get back to work. Alright, I'm going to make a little garnish dish for this meal. I'm going to make a little bit of an apple cider slaw. I'm actually using, this is pretty nice, I'm using the broccoli slaw, which I really like. You know, it's a little bit harder, but I like it as a nice little garnish for this kind of dish. So I'm going to start, I got my broccoli slaw here. I'm going to put in some apple cider vinegar. Calls for about 1/4 cup. I'm going to put in, you know, I'm going to eye it. I'm just going to kind of put it in until it's nice and moist. It also calls for about 1/4 cup of olive oil, and again, I'm just going to kind of like eye that up. I don't want this too watery. I just want a nice slaw in there. And I'm using my gloves just because, you know, it'll be easier to clean up later on. Okay. If you can see Grunt in the background there, I dropped a few pieces of the carrot slaw on the ground, and he loves broccoli and carrots, so he's over there picking them up off the ground. Alright, I'm going to add in just a touch of lime juice. Okay. And then I'm going to add in some yellow mustard. You know, people use Grey Poupon. You could use that. You know, you could use Dijon. I just like a regular yellow mustard. French's makes a nice yellow mustard. Okay. I'm going to add in some pepper. I'm going to add in some of my smoked paprika. I know you're waiting on this episode to see when I use my smoked paprika. Just a touch of salt, not too much, because remember, this is a very salty dish. And a little bit of my white pepper. Okay. Alright, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix that in. And I got a nice, beautiful slaw garnish dish for this meal. I do love a good pickled kind of entree with all of my holiday meals. And that's more of the, you know, growing up in a European Roman Catholic neighborhood, we had a lot of pickled stuff. When I was little, I didn't like it so much. Now as an adult, I love it. All right, and now that the meal is done, it's time to make the gravy. So I took my roast. Look at how beautiful that is. Got my roast out of the oven. Beautiful flavor. Oh, if you could just smell that. I mean, that is just a beautiful flavor right there. I'm going to take a spoon. I'm going to take some of the gravy. So normally I would take the meat out and just make it in the pan sometimes, but I'm going to let that sit because I want to keep that warm. And I'm not going to make a lot of gravy, so I'm just going to take some of my juice from here. I'm going to put it inside. And I want more of a brown gravy, a thicker, browner gravy. Okay, so I'm not going to add any cream to this. So I got my juice. I'm going to add in and stir as I go along. I'm going to add in some flour to this. Okay. And I got this on a medium so that this way it's continuing to cook up. Okay, as I go along. And I'm going to add in just a little bit of yellow mustard to this. And a little bit of black pepper. And that's a simple brown gravy for your meal. Alright, as always comes my favorite part of cooking any meal, the tasting. Okay, so let's get in here. And like I said, you don't have to do all of this. You don't have to do the slaw. I kind of like the juxtaposition of a cold and hot together. I'm going to start with the potatoes. Soft, but not mushy. Okay, and that's the way you want them. You want them nice and soft. You don't want them mushy. Let's try the pork. I'm going to try this with a little bit of slaw here. Again, that hot and cold kind of together. Nice power of the meat. A little bit of the sourness from the slaw. Just a beautiful dish. And again, I hope you enjoyed joining me here on Cooking with a Veteran. Please like, share, follow. As always, if there's something you want to see me cook, go ahead and reach out to me. Thank you again to my sponsor, the Tennessee VFW Foundation, and my new sponsor, which I'll be talking about next week on my episode, Oscar Mike Radio. Looking forward to doing some stuff with them, and we have a few more sponsors coming along. So until next time, hoorah.